So I wanted to go ahead and give an update on this book, Elantris. I have been reading it on and off just because, I'm working and I don't have enough time with stuff, especially in my shift. Currently, I'm on page 154 or chapter 12. I am reading this much slower than I would like, but like I said, there's so many factors going on and I just can't read as often as I would like. But so far, I am really loving how this is going. So in terms of Rodin, I like how he's like, I don't know how to explain it. Essentially, he is creating his own like gang in Elantris, and I just love like he's just I don't know how to explain it. He's just um very leader-esque, if that makes sense. I know he was a prince, or he is or was a prince, and he has his friend, you know, essentially as the bait. I just wish Rodin and Serene really met in person, because I just feel like they're both really good and compatible, not only as leaders, as their own titles like prince and princess, but also in their own way, you know what I mean? So first with Rodin, like I said, he is creating his own gang, and I don't know, like he just, made up this plan. um, I don't exactly know what he's doing. From my understanding, he's creating hope in Elantris, because Elantris is just very hopeless and stuff like that. But I don't understand why he's trying to create a little gang to go ahead and do so. I don't know. Like I said, I'm reading this on and off, so um, I don't remember everything. Rathan, the priest, I don't remember much about what happened to him last, because like I said, like it's legit, each chapter is revolving around these three people. So like Rodin's first chapter, second chapter is the priest, third chapter Serene, for example, like that, and then it just goes back and forth in a cycle. So I don't remember much about this priest, but the person that's like following him, I forgot his name. He has a lot of hatred in his heart, and I don't like how the priest is like, he just thinks he's like all that, like he thinks his religion is all that. It just reminds me of real world stuff, that's why. And Serene, right now, this most recent chapter that I read, chapter 11, is essentially her being involved in the meeting that is usually held by the prince. But like I said, since he's dead, Kin, her uncle, Serene's uncle, had to go ahead and gather the people that would usually go to the meetings, and only 5 people arrived. But even with the 5 people that arrived, they were still very impactful people, amongst that whole 30 people group. Do you know what I mean? I find it interesting that they, you know, really tried to disregard her for a good portion of the meeting. Like, they allowed her to stay, but they were expecting her to just listen. But I like how she, really pushed forward, like, I do have something important to say. And at the end, they readily agreed to her plan. Because if it was just amongst them, they probably would have like done one of the other what is his name? Like the person that is responsible for having the best army. I forgot his name. But they would have probably done that route. But Serene's route, I like, based off her explanation stuff, it just seems better, because the whole point of the meeting is to go ahead and overthrow the Arlen's current system of essentially oppressing their people to go ahead and increase their status. That is how I'm understanding it, the status of the nobleman. So currently there seems to be like some sort of slave system, and Serene noticed that, like, if you want to go and overthrow the government, you cannot like continue on with this plan. Like you have to do something different. You gotta give hope back to these people, because like Elantris, which is the city that was perspiring and making this place, essentially, um, I'll just say the greatest place to live in at that moment, at that time, you know, they remember that time. They still remember it. So from that time of when they were able to be like owners and still have their own autonomy, to now being slaves, and whoever was like poor during Elantris time now become nobles. It's like they still remember what it was like, and they have the hope of it becoming like that again. So I am excited to see how Serene's plan goes forth. I'm excited to see how the prince's plan of creating a gang proceeds throughout the story. And I kind of want to see like how I'm wondering if the priest's mind starts to change, or if he starts to notice like Serene's plan or like the other nobles, and he essentially turns their back on them and be like to the king, oh yeah, these people, they met in secret to go ahead and overthrow you. You know what I mean? Like, is he gonna snitch? I don't know. I feel like he will, because he does have a plan to go ahead and overthrow the country, essentially, or this part of the country, for some religion. Like, I do not understand that at all. I don't get it. But we'll see. In terms of The Great Gatsby, I'm not interested in reading it. Like, I want to try to read a classic along with the fantasy, but I've been like gravitating towards Elantris more, just because I think the story is interesting. Like I said, I've read this already, so that's why I'm not super interested in it. But I want to go ahead and reread it to like have a better understanding that I'm older. I am gonna read this in the morning. I'm gonna force myself to read it, not in like a bad way, but it's like, I've spent a lot of time reading Elantris because it's something that I enjoy, but I also want to go through this book, like a classic book, while doing that, and I feel like doing this combination of like a fantasy book, because that's why I've noticed I really like fantasy books, and a classic book, it does not interchange in a way, and it makes me remember the differences, because what I did previously was 2 fantasy or like fiction books, and I was kind of like being like, oh yeah, this character reminds me of this book, or this character from the other book that I'm reading, essentially I started to find like similarities, and I didn't really mix up the stories because they were vastly different, but in terms of the characters' personalities, it's like there's no different things. I don't know. But the next fantasy book I'm definitely gonna read is the second book of The Prison Healer. I did read that first one. I would like to get my own copy, but I think I'm gonna get my own copy after I read the 2 other books. But yeah, I'm really happy I'm still reading books and, still enjoying the hobbies that I have picked up over the years, or have dropped over the years. And this is my update.